My roots lie in spirituality. That's how everything started. I owe everything to Baba Hardev Singh Ji, the blessings of my community, elders and loved ones. Growing up in a family where devotion and service has always been the priority, with my grandfather writing devotional songs, parents singing and playing music, it was almost predetermined I'd follow stead. I'm still discovering what my sound is, without mimicking what's already being done. But this mixtape highlights everything I enjoy singing, authentic, imperfect, and raw. Always connecting with heart and soul. Enjoy the journey. Hi, I'm Vibs Bhatia, and you're watching me on DESIblitz.com.
DESIblitz.com.
Vibs, thank you for joining us today. I wanted to talk to you obviously about your sustainable work and your music as well. With music, you started to learn around 6, 7. And I just wanted to know kind of how you got influenced so early within music, and were there any kind of personal experiences or memories that stand out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me today. So for me, I think music, like a lot of South Asian youngsters, I'd say my age, music came through devotion and spiritual kind of music. I was brought up in a community where we sung devotional hymns, shabads, geets, and different bhajans, and that's kind of where I started music. It was very family driven. Everyone in my family is very musical, so they kind of pushed me into learning harmonium and singing. I've never had vocal training, so I started learning harmonium when I was very young and sort of singing along, and I guess part of the identity journey for me through music came about when I was at school, moving on to secondary. So I've had this very sort of traditional upbringing and very grounded in spirituality. But then being British Asian and Indian, Punjabi, I was trying to figure out, okay, how much of this resonates with me, how much of it, being at school, you're influenced by friends and peers, and you're kind of questioning how much of this is me. So music throughout my childhood kind of was a journey of self-discovery and what it meant to me to be a British woman, but also Indian and Punjabi. And the spiritual side still continues now, but I would say a part of my teenage years when I was exploring more, I wanted to start learning guitar, and I sang more English songs or Western kind of R&B, pop, and explored that genre and how it spoke to me. And then as I found kind of my voice, it became more fusion, bringing about sort of the Eastern and Western together and being able to express that through music. So I think the whole journey itself has been really, it's been really special to me, and I thank my elders and my parents for rooting me in a place that I've eventually come back to now. But yeah, there's no particular memory that stands out, but the entire thing has been a massive part of my identity.
I just wanted to touch on a couple of things. You said obviously your parents are a big part of supporting you. And I think especially within the Asian community, sometimes the support isn't there with more creative paths. So did you find that quite refreshing to see? And do you think more communities are promoting more creative careers, or is there still work to be done?
I think it's a yes and no answer, because it fundamentally comes down to your family, your traditions, and I guess what is valued. There's more we can talk about here and unpack about, I guess, the reason and need that parents have instilled in us about having financial stability, given the migration patterns and how people have migrated to the UK from little. So there's, I think, that aspect. But for me growing up, my parents were never black and white. They were never sort of encouraging me to enter any particular career. It was very much like, we support you finding what you enjoy. But naturally, given the creative arts and the music that was part of their life, it influenced me as well. And I think I always knew I never wanted to put my eggs in all one basket. And I was kind of like, I enjoy multiple subjects, I enjoy multiple disciplinaries, and I want to explore music. It's a massive part of my sort of career journey, but I never was all out, like I'm gonna just follow music, or I'm gonna just follow my degree in education. And I'm really grateful for my grandparents, my parents' support, and the rest of my family really for encouraging, no matter what I was doing at any given one point. It was always like, do your best in it and try and do your best. But I think I was always quite aware that trying to follow music or just one creative arts wouldn't necessarily give me immediate financial stability or as much freedom with that aspect. That being said, with current now, the way that the industry is changing, the amount of grants and artists funding available, I think it makes a huge difference in how viable that can be, and how much financially you can become a lot more steadfast and stable in the arts industry. So I think, overall it's changing for sure. And I think along with that, our community is changing, and people who are seeing that you can do multiple things, like you can be in consulting and follow creative arts and music. And, I think that's changing with our generation, because we're kind of going to get what we love doing. And I think we have that privilege that we can do that, which maybe our parents and their parents didn't have at the start.
And when you were growing up, you obviously had a little bit of a shift in your teens, going towards Western and pop music. Mm. Were there any artists that stood out to you that you wanted to kind of replicate or impacted your sound?
Yeah, so it's really interesting actually, because when I think of my very young childhood, I would actually say I was a complete Bollywood, ghazal, Qawwali, I was all about it. I would come home and I'd literally rewatch Kabhi Khushi Kabhie Gham and so many Bollywood films, sing along to those songs. And as I moved into my teenage, at the same time, I guess, I used to see the magazines and I saw my friends with McFly and Busted type, posters everywhere and stickers. So I would follow that because I didn't want to be an odd person out. But inherently, I knew when I went home, I enjoyed my Bollywood music. I love my Hindi, film music. And then later into my teenage, I had really different phases. So loved High School Musicals. I was all about kind of the musical world. But equally, R&B, later in my teens, sort of getting on it with Drake and The Weeknd, Beyonce, Leanne La Havas, loads of R&B, soul. I started exploring further back as well, Aretha Franklin and so many jazz artists. So I think eventually it was a full world tour of music, and I started to appreciate so many different styles because I think I started off in such a diverse music set, which kind of opened up my ears and eyes to a lot of different styles and being able to appreciate it. So there's very few. Even I had a rock phase as well. So I feel like I've explored it all in my teenage years, as I guess many kids do.
And then all this kind of exploration kind of led to different opportunities, and obviously the Qawwali project as well that you're part of. So could you just kind of touch upon how that actually came about and what the orchestra does, or what type of music you perform?
Absolutely. So absolute privilege. And I do want to share like a story that feels very full circle to me. So when I was I think I must have been 12 or 13, Abby Samba, who's the lead of Orchestra Qawwali, I saw her perform on The Voice. And as a female, like I've touched on the identity journey already, a female Indian girl trying to see representation, she was the first musician artist that I saw actually killing it on stage, because I think at some point people have seen either on Britain's Got Talent or The Voice or multiple media kind of performance TV shows, you'd see an Asian person often get mocked off the stage or do something funny and silly, and no one was really taken seriously. But for the first time I saw her being able to bring rag and into like jazz and blues and Western sounds and be appreciated for it and get into the semi-finals. So I followed her journey as a young girl from then. And as I mentioned earlier, like spirituality and Sufi music was also part of what all my family listened to, and that influence was there. So I knew about Nusrat and Qawwali, and when I started playing guitar, I started to explore with acoustic versions of different favourite songs, like Tere Bin Nahi Lagda, it was in Bend It Like Beckham, and all those ones that I could relate to, I started to sing more and explore. When I was at university, I did a music collaboration with one of Rashil's close friends, Janan, and it just so happened that when they released Man Kunto Mola, was a few years later, they started to look for other singers who did who had sung Qawwali style before. Not many females in the UK, and not many who understand like the meaning and spirituality of it as much as well. And so that's how the dots connected, because I mentioned to Jen, and I used to fangirl Abby, I still do, but I was just like, oh, she's amazing, and you know, I followed her journey. I loved how, and I still love how she brings so much of our culture as British people, but also the Asian side of our upbringing as well, and that classical tradition in music. So that's how Orchestra Qawwali came about and how I got involved. And I was just really, I still feel so privileged to be a part of that group. As a female as well, being able to sing Qawwali, which has been a predominantly male-dominated space, and being one of the only female chorus singers to support Abby also feels hugely empowering. And the most special part for me is being in the crowd and being able to see like the diversity in the audience. I remember our very first performance in Glasgow. I think 2/3 of the crowd was Scottish. Didn't understand a word of what we were singing really, but were so moved by the way the orchestral the orchestral sounds come with the power of Qawwali, especially her voice, and it's so moving. My parents told me after they were in the crowd, like people were crying and like so moved by the performance. So just seeing how like on a religious level, on a spiritual level, music level, like so many different styles, being able to fuse that together, it's really high energy in the room when we do perform. So that's, yeah, I love that part.
Obviously, being part of such a big but close team, and an orchestra as well is hard within itself for any musician, no matter what genre they're in. So, which kind of challenges or difficulties came with being part of such a team?
Honestly, I felt like it was too good to be true at the start, because when you look at just our core team in the Orchestra Qawwali group, we are so diverse, just ethnically, and where we're from in the world and how everyone came together. There was no challenge from that sense of gelling with everyone, because often when you're in large music groups, you might have a few difficult personalities or people that aren't necessarily on the same wavelength, and that just didn't happen with the group. So it was more from a technical perspective. From my personal experience, was I was never used to the in-ear culture that has to happen on stage. So I was used to being an acoustic guitarist singing with the mic. Maybe had some, I had something from speakers and on the stage, but nothing like in-ears. And it's a totally different experience as a performer, because everything you hear is so much different to what everyone else is hearing. And I think that was, for me to kind of get used to that setup, was probably very different, and an adaptation, because I was just used to being able to hear like a harmonium or guitar or tabla and being able to sing live. This with in-ears, for anybody who doesn't know, it's kind of, you have controlled levels of what you can hear in your ear. So we can hear Abby, we can hear bits of the piano, we can hear the tabla, we can hear each other and ourselves, but we can't hear the orchestra in our in-ears. It's everything is felt, so you can be on the stage and feel the vibration, but what everyone else is hearing, we don't hear that, which was, it was really different. Now I feel like I'm really used to it, but initially that was what I found kind of challenging.
And then a kind of completely different, like the opposite to that, is the music that you produce yourself. So you had the Vibs tape come out last year, at the start of last year. And that's, I was listening to it earlier, and it's very different, but very refreshing to hear as well. So obviously you have a range of things like covering Michael Jackson. You also sing on top of an AJ Tracy beat. So, a whole wide range of genres. So what was the kind of inspiration behind making such a diverse tape?
I think that tape came about, it was complete 50-50 collaboration between myself and 2MB. And some of the songs like Aaja Mahi, I would have never said initially let me sing that over an AJ Tracy type vibe. And he kind of pushed me that way to be like, just try it out and see how it goes. Aaja Mahi, aa sohniya ve aake aaj mere gale lage ja. Some of the songs are very dear to me. So I love singing Boohe Bhatia, I love singing Lata Mangeshkar, some of the tracks, and some of the Hindi, Punjabi folk. That was definitely more what I was gravitating towards. Similar to Qawwali, again, I've done a Nusrat medley on there. So I'd say the inspiration for some of the tracks were definitely me testing my boundaries, seeing what genres I've never really sung before and seeing how it was received. And some were just genuinely things I've sung for so many years. I really enjoy singing, and it just coming together. So that was a total, I'd say a COVID project, to be honest, because it took that much time to refine and get to grips with what we wanted to put out. We did multiple versions of different songs, and then came to an agreement on which ones we wanted to put in the tape. So yeah.
Could you give us a few lines from one of your favorite songs off there?
Yeah, sure. I'll do Boohe Bhatia. I do enjoy that. बूहे बारियां ते नाले कंधा टपके, बूहे बारियां ते नाले कंधा टपके, आवांगी हवा बन के, बूहे बारियां है बूहे बारियां, ये दुआ करते हैं हमेशा
kind of away from music now, you do a lot of work with sustainability.
Yeah.
Could you just touch upon the type of work that you do? You obviously found a company yourself, so maybe just a bit about that, the type of work.
Absolutely. So I'm a managing consultant in my 9-to-5 job, which is also around sustainability and climate change. My career, sort of my corporate job, has always been in this sector and industry. And I also founded in 2021 South Asians for Sustainability, which is a grassroots community organisation. I'll talk a bit about my journey that way and what led me to that. So I actually study psychology at university for the love of the subject. I love understanding what drives people, what motivates them. I was really interested, but always knew like I'm too emotionally driven, and things impact me a lot, that I would be able to take on more of like a therapist clinical role. So I just went in to university. Unlike a lot of students, I think, who kind of know, okay, I'm going to do business and go for a corporate job or whatever the degree is. And I just wanted to learn more. And just so happened, during the time of my final year, I took a Global Challenges module, which covered everything on climate crisis and social development goals, and had like this penny drop moment. Very cliche, but in that moment, I was like, this is a huge crisis, and it's, impacting everyone in the world. I have to do something in this space. So then I spent the following year after graduating figuring out, working with different NGOs. One of them was a Midlands-based one called What's Up, and it was about single-use plastics. So I helped with the initiation of that, and then went to Indonesia for a while. And I just tried to pivot my skill set as much as I could to get into this space. Eventually landed like a retail-based role in the head office at Currys, and worked in their sort of CSR, sustainable business team for 2.5 years, and gained a lot of like core skills because it was a lean team, so I had to learn and pick up a lot on the job, whether it was environmental-based or social sustainability. I'll rewind a bit because I think sustainability, nobody really knows what it means, or if they do, they have different definitions and relate to different parts. So essentially it's about sustaining what we have access to currently, the current generation and everyone on planet Earth today, and being able to have that same access to resources for future generations, and being able to lead a quality of life that is, it meets basic human rights and more. So the campaign came about because throughout my first few years of the career, I went to lots of networking events, tried to seek mentorship really, and I'm not even exaggerating, sometimes the only woman of colour in the room, the only person of colour in some cases, and I was, in my mind, I was like shocked, like genuinely shocked, like how is it that something that's impacting communities in South Asia and different parts of Africa and South America, where they're all indigenous communities and people of colour, how are they not represented in this space? Like, how is that possible? And I did a bit more digging and found like there was literally no organisation globally that was pulling together everything from a South Asian perspective about climate change, about sustainable behaviours, and took it on myself essentially during COVID. We had a lot more time on our hands when we were locked up at home, to start networking with people online, and everybody that I spoke to all came back with, yeah, we need this space, like we really want to see this space, because there was a lot of people doing awesome things, and they have been for many years, but the representation issue, just one quick stat, in the UK, the environment sector is the second least diverse after farming. And what that means is like there are very little people of colour working in this space. So I wanted to do something to start highlighting the work that is being done by South Asian people specifically, with the whole diversity sector and I guess that D&I initiatives overall. Often you'll find marginalised groups are kind of all grouped together. So if you're black and brown, you're kind of put in one kind of group. But within South Asia, we have so much diversity as it is, let alone when we look at the rest of the world and other communities. So I wanted something where an organisation, a platform where we could talk about things like Diwali, amazing food and culture. The weddings that we have are so grand, but there was nothing out there talking about it in a relatable way culturally. So if you wanted a more sustainable South Asian wedding or Desi wedding, what would you do? If you wanted to not have sparklers and firecrackers at Diwali, how do you go about like celebrating it in a more sustainable way that's not as damaging to the planet? But also linking up with parts of South Asia. So there's loads of amazing work happening in different parts of India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, everywhere. Despite the crisis that they're facing. We know, and we've seen in the news about Punjab floods just 2 weeks ago, and that has come from different areas. We saw Pakistan floods last year, and more these events, they're not random, it's all linked to climate change. So connecting our community in the UK, South Asian communities, with the reason that that's happening, and if they want to get involved, how they can get involved. So I think there's a huge anxiety almost that you look at the issue and you're like, actually, what can I do? I'm a tiny speck in this problem and issue, but actually small steps on a daily basis that makes sense to you, right? Because it's all well and good saying you can go vegan or you should travel less or you shouldn't drive this car or you shouldn't buy these clothes, but it's what makes sense to you as an individual, because not everyone's going to be able to do everything, not everyone's going to be able to connect to everything, but there might be one thing that you're really passionate about and you can go ahead and learn more about it and see how, if you want to change your lifestyle, how you can, and ultimately then supporting our communities in South Asian regions who are being disproportionately affected now. And I think that disconnect is really real, but more and more people now are learning more about it. It's just about the way we frame it from a media perspective and headlines as well.
I was going to touch on, when you do the work that you do and you approach certain communities or people, is there any kind of instances where you've approached someone of a South Asian background where you've kind of got some backlash in terms of, this isn't real, or, what you're saying is kind of nonsense, or it doesn't affect us? And how do you think that would change in the future, or do you think it will not?
I mean, it goes without saying that there are people who don't necessarily believe that what the climate science is showing is reality. And to be honest, there were times when I was a bit younger and earlier on in my career, I was very passionate activist, and I was just like, this is black and white. How can you even say this? It's this is the science, how can you not believe it? And I think my approach at that age was very naive from a behavioural change perspective and understanding other people's kind of perspectives and why they might think that way. And the more and more conversations I've had with people in South Asian communities, I think I've learned there's different ways to approach speaking to them about climate change and sustainability more broadly. For example, people don't necessarily think that social impact work like period poverty or gender inequality or access to education is part of the sustainable journey as well as environmental crises. So it's, I think, understanding some people will see planet and nature and really respect it and find that connection to it, and might be more willing to make changes in their day-to-day. Other people might connect to other issues and other things that are equally important. Like, there's no point of us doing all this work to reduce carbon and reduce the global temperatures if there's no communities to save it for, right? So the people agenda, the social side of sustainability and community is just as important as environment. And I think that rhetoric and that story is often forgotten, or it's very separated, which doesn't necessarily help with those people who would like to do something but don't necessarily know how. And there's also an acceptance that some people just won't necessarily care or want to change, especially when you think of, you know, the migration patterns, as I mentioned before, and the toil and hardship that a lot of our older generations went through to provide a better life and lifestyle for us here. So I've had a lot of comments like, but why should we, you know, stop shopping where we want to shop? Or, you know, why shouldn't we drive this car? Because we worked hard, our ancestors have worked hard to afford this lifestyle. And with those people, it's like, okay, but is there anything that you think about with I guess you've got children or you've got grandchildren, what do you think about what the world will look like for them and what kind of things that they will have to kind of struggle with? It's kind of full circle, because it's just the way that the climate crisis is. It's kind of like, it's going to come back where there's so many stats and information out there. But even in the UK, being in this part of the world, we will have issues with resourcing for food and water and so many key things that we kind of take for granted at the minute. You think that, tomato shortage last year? That was inherently because of, like, there were crop failures and you know, there was a huge change in access to those kind of vegetables and whatever. We're going down a rabbit hole, but do you know what I mean? Like, it's connecting those dots, I think. And if they don't necessarily care for themselves, they will definitely care for future generations. Well, at least I hope.
I'm miling my ting from barking, 7 a.m. in the morning. She's calling, I'm yawning. She's drawing, no stalling. I'm miling my ting from barking, 7 a.m. in the morning. She's calling, I'm yawning. She's drawing, no stalling.
And then with that type of work that you do, but then also your photography, your writing, your music, are you trying to find an underlying link between all, like, your creative art forms to have kind of one universal meaning?
Absolutely. So I started out South Asians for Sustainability predominantly because I sought mentorship and I sought somebody that I could lean onto for career progression, advice, or whatever it was at the time. And as I've evolved through the journey, as I've evolved with my music, as I've seen more of the industry and career and explored more creative arts, I've really felt this underlying part about keeping our culture alive and being able to language is a massive part of it, arts is a massive part of it, but from a cultural sustainability lens, which is quite, I guess people are going to be like, what is that? By that I mean the things that we know, like what makes us our identity. So I consider myself a British Indian woman. I'm passionate about sustainability and climate change. I'm passionate about music, but particularly South Asian arts and that reverence for parts of our culture that will be lost if we don't uphold them. How can I eventually bring that all together under one sphere and talk about it in a way that will connect to different types of people and different groups of people? That's the, I guess, nirvana and the end goal where I'd like to be, in a place where I can bring together both my love for music and sustainability and climate change, and maybe use music as well as a mode to promote the message or to spread more awareness about the issue. So yeah, I'm still on the journey, and you never stop learning, but that would be ideal for me.
Just finally, could you just touch on any work musically that you're maybe releasing, or any upcoming shows that you've got on?
Absolutely. So in the Midlands, actually, with Orchestra Qawwali project, we have a huge show coming up at Symphony Hall. So that will be in November this year, for anybody who would like to attend. In more recent, I guess, in the next few weeks, we're playing at WOMAD, which is the World Music Festival, close to Bristol area. We'll be playing at a French festival later in summer, and I think it's Dinard Opening Festival it's called. And yeah, just really exciting stuff coming. I'm looking at actually making an acoustic album, which will have more devotional roots. My grandfather has written a lot of the devotional songs that I've sung over the years, and I'm really hoping to make a body of work and be able to release that. It will be different to the Vibs tape. It will just be, in my vision for it is just me and guitar, kind of like a, I don't know, at-home vibe type chilled thing. So that's coming. But yeah, lots ahead.
Perfect. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you so much.
DESIblitz.com